Mrs. Wisdom, can you tell me about the history of educational technology?
Sure thing, Mr. Sponge. Let's mainly focus on what happened before 1900. That'll be plenty for today. The first thing you should know is that the elder Sophists were the ancestors of educational technology. They were exploring these ideas around the 5th century BC.
That's really interesting.
You see, the Sophist legacy was to combine the culture of humanities and science together, or technology. Next on the timeline is Socrates, 470 to 399 BC. He is best known through the writing of Plato, his student.
I've heard of the Socratic method. Isn't it still being used today?
Yes. Instructors use this method to this day. Moving along, we can look at Abelard and the scholastic method, appearing in the 12th and 13th centuries. Abelard encouraged interpretation rather than rote memory at his cathedral school in Paris. St. Thomas Aquinas took Abelard's method further and taught students how to learn through syllogisms. Abelard, though, is where credit is due, no doubt.
I will try to remember that.
An influence no well after his time, Comenius is noteworthy. He is best known for the creation of the Orbis Pictus, a children's textbook that taught through pictures and text.
Wasn't that the first one of its kind?
Actually, that's not entirely true. But it is the most popular. Comenius' work was not discovered until the mid-19th century, however. His influence is still seen today. Did you know that in the United States, education was not very advanced in the 1800s?
No. That's crazy.
I'm sure you've heard of the one-room schoolhouses.
Sure, like in Little House on the Prairie, right?
Right. Sounds really cozy, but in reality, these schools were not cozy at all and not very effective in teaching students.
So what happened next? This is riveting.
Something pretty revolutionary in education, the Lancasterian schools. Although it was less common in the mid-19th century, from 1806 to 1853 it thrived in New York City. The basic idea was to cram as many kids as possible into the classroom and systematically teach. There were sometimes as many as 500 pupils in a classroom together.
Talk about class size being out of control.
Yes, but at the time, this was a way to educate the poor, cheaply. So it made sense for the time and brought free education to the country. It's also important to mention Pestalozzi, who made his mark in the 1800s. He is known for psychologizing instruction, meaning he based instructional practices on the stages of human development. He ran experiments through 1825.
Did he do anything I might recognize today?
Sure. If you ever used fraction boards, he's behind that. And the ABC of Anschauung.
Huh?
Well, it is complicated, but like the fraction boards, he tried to teach content in the simplest elements and expand on that knowledge. He also influenced Friedrich Wilhelm
Froebel. I knew that. He's known as the founder of kindergarten.
You are so smart. Yes, but back to Pestalozzi. Pestalozzianism came to the U.S. by 1809 through one of his assistants, and his influence spread through the 1800s. It came to be known also as object teaching. Edward Sheldon brought sensory training to the schools in Oswego, New York. It was popular, then declined. Afterward, in Quincy, Massachusetts, Francis Parker introduced object learning, but through objects that were more real. Object teaching had its greatest popularity in the 1860s and also influenced Froebel.
So I remember Froebel, but who brought his ideas to the U.S.?
Good question. The progress of kindergarten was brought on by Mrs. Carlshurz around 1880, in Watertown, Wisconsin of all places. It spread over the next 20 years. There were over 1,400 public kindergartens by the end of that century.
Oh.
Last, we should mention the Herbation method. I know I am losing you here.
Yes, this is quite fascinating, but I am getting sleepy.
Before 1880 there is little reference of herb art. But interestingly, the U.S. was most influenced by him.
What did he come up with?
Well, he actually took a lot of what Pestalozzi was doing and intellectualized it. Although most educational materials, textbooks and educational journals were written by those steeped in Herbation thought from 1895 to around 1925, it was criticized by many theorists.
Why?
Well, it was too programmed. Teachers were given content and taught to teach it. That made learning more robotic.
What's wrong with robots?
Nothing, but I can see our time is up.